Okay, I'm a little bit nervous. One, because this is the episode that I record and edit and fully produce and upload all today. So when you're hearing this tomorrow, I just did this the day before. And for all of my other episodes, I'm a month ahead. So this one always is a little bit of a stressful episode, but I do it this way so I have the most up-to-date numbers. Hi, I'm Andi Smiley, your friendly podcast guide. I help you create, launch, and grow a podcast that is fun and fulfilling. Whether you're just starting or a few years in, I share tips, stories from my own journey, and insights from podcasters I admire. In this episode, I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain of the Friendly Podcast Guide and a little bit of my personal life, too. So before we dive into how the Friendly Podcast Guide is doing, what I did during my break, all of those things, I always like to start these episodes answering the two questions that I ask my guests when they're on. And the first question is, what's the last podcast that I listened to just for me? And this one is called The Silt Verses. It is an audio drama that is fascinating. It definitely is like semi-horror, which I wasn't exactly prepared for. But I am hooked, and it's not scary enough to give me nightmares as long as I don't listen to it right before bed. So it's kind of like the person who recommended it to me explained that it's like kind of like Greek gods-esque, but in the modern time. And like the gods can be like made or bought. Like if you have enough money, you can like become a god. I'm not quite to that part yet, so I don't exactly understand all of that, but I think that's fascinating, and I'm starting to see the inklings of that. I'm in episode, I think 4 of 12. I think there's 12 episodes in this first season, and it has been fascinating. I think fascinating is the best word to use. So if you're looking for something really interesting to listen to for a road trip or for something like that, The Silt Verses is one I would try if you're okay with a little bit of like horror sci-fi vibes. And then the second question is, what's a simple life hack that's making your life better right now? This one might sound a little silly, but it brings me so much joy, so I had to share it. I put stickers in my planner every week, and it makes me happy every time I do it. So I had to bring my planner to show you. Here are my stickers for this week. I wanted them to like be kind of springy. And so I've got owls and a bike and some birds. I guess owls are birds, but you know what I mean. And they're just so cute, and they just make my planner so much happier. So that is my life hack that is making my life better right now. And now we get to dive into how the Friendly Podcast Guide did during my winter break. So I had 2 episodes that came out during the break. One was my interview with Jen Morris, which was delightful. If you haven't listened to that yet, I will link it in the show notes. Jen is a gem and had so many good insights. She's an awesome human, and she's a very smart human too. So I learned a lot from that interview. And that one got 55 downloads in the first week. I think now it's up to like 90, which is really fun. I'm really happy because that means 90 people have been able to learn from Jen and become better because of it. The other episode that came out during my winter break is the podcast trailer for season 3. And that one got 48 downloads in the first week, which I'm not going to lie, I was a smidgen sad about when it first happened. But then I took a step back and remembered that that means 48 people took the time to listen to my podcast trailer for season 3. And then I felt better, because one thing that I am going to really be aware of during season 3 for myself, and you can tag along if you want to, is remembering that downloads for download's sake mean nothing. Like, those numbers are just numbers. But when you look at each individual download as a person, that is a person that took the time to listen to your podcast. That's amazing. So if download numbers have been getting you down, that's another way to look at it, as it's just information. It's not talking at all about your worth as a human. And it's not even saying if your podcast is good or not. It just might mean you need to make some changes to help more people hear it and be excited about it. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I almost took this section out, but I wanted to be transparent with you. So I've made $8.52 since the beginning of the year, since January. I have some things that are coming down the line that I'm really excited about, and I'm going to touch on some of them in a minute that will help me make money this year. But This winter break was definitely a time for setting up all of the things that are going to help me make money, and not so much like a making money time, which is, not going to lie, a little bit of a bummer, but I did make $8.52. My podcast planner, I made it with Krista Kirkham. She is a delightful human and she makes really good planners, and I am an affiliate for this planner. So someone bought the planner, which was really fun. And so I got money from that. If you want this planner, it is kind of my very favorite thing right now, and it makes my life so much better. I'll put a link in the show notes. And truly, I'll also put a link to a video that I did on Instagram that kind of walked you through what the planner is and like how it works, so you can kind of see what the pages are all about. I think that will be helpful too. So I'll link both of those for you. The last thing that I use to measure how the Friendly Podcast Guide is doing is how many podcast coaching calls that I've done. At the end of season 2, I had done 22 podcast coaching calls, which I'm very proud of. That was a leap. I'd never done that many in such a short amount of time. But now I am at 40 podcast coaching calls, which I am also very proud of. It has been so much fun, and truly, it's kind of my very favorite thing to do podcast coaching calls. My goal is 60 calls by the end of season 3. So if you're looking to get some help with your podcast, the first coaching call with me is always free. So just DM me on Instagram and we will find a time for us to connect and do a coaching call. Before we talk about the experiments that I'm going to be trying in the month of March to improve the Friendly Podcast Guide, I want to tell you a little bit more about my podcast Jumpstart sessions. Have you been thinking about starting a podcast for a while? Like maybe for a year or more, and you keep putting it off because it feels super overwhelming? I hear you. I've been there. It actually took me 5 years before I finally started my podcast. And I would love to help you with your podcast so that you don't have to wait 5 years before you start yours. We can do a free 30-minute podcast Jumpstart session where I'll answer all of your podcasting questions and we'll talk through any blocks that are getting in the way of starting your podcast. Then after the call, I'll send you a list of my favorite microphones and my favorite podcast hosting platforms, along with the next 2 steps you need to take to start your podcast. If this sounds like a good fit for you, click the link in the show notes to sign up for a free podcast Jumpstart session now. Okay, now I get to tell you about the experiments that I'm trying in the month of March to improve the Friendly Podcast Guide. The first one is to incorporate more storytelling into my episodes. So I listened to a lot of the For the Love of History podcast during the winter break, and TK is the host, and she does such a good job at weaving stories into her episodes, and it just sucks me in that much more and makes me that much more engaged. And I realize that I want to do that with my episodes too. I want them to be more engaging, and the best way to do that is through storytelling. So I'm excited, and hopefully you can notice that in the episodes that are coming out this month. I've tried really hard. We'll see how it goes. And I think this might be one of those things that I need to practice for a while until I'm really good at it. But I'm excited to start that process. Another thing that I've been experimenting with is Threads, which is pretty much like Instagram's version of Twitter. I've been thoroughly enjoying it over there. It's definitely more like straight thoughts from my brain go to Threads, while Instagram I feel like is a little bit more edited and pretty. So if you want to get unedited Andi, go find me on Threads. It's been a lot of fun over there. Truly, one of the best things about Threads for me right now is I will kind of test different content ideas, different episode ideas over there to see what people are interested in, and then those usually translate into episode ideas for me. Another experiment that I'm doing is not worrying so much about the background of my videos. So this background is pretty. For those of you listening, it's just like fake plants on a shelf. It's nothing crazy. But the hard thing is sometimes I am recording at my parents' house like I am right now, and sometimes I'm at my own house. And so trying to have a background that is the same every time was really stressing me out last season, and it just made it a little bit more difficult, more stressful. And I've noticed that at least so far, the background of my video doesn't really affect who listens and who doesn't, and who enjoys it and who doesn't. So I'm going to stress less about it for right now. I think eventually I do want something pretty and nice, but there are other things that need my attention right now, and the background of my videos is not one of them. So the experiment is to do nothing pretty much and just not worry about it. We'll see how that goes. Another experiment that I'm trying is I have a goal of talking about my podcast in real life, so not just on social media, every single day of March. So far, I am two for two. Today is March 3rd, and I haven't talked about my podcast in real life today yet, but the day's not over. So I'm 2 for 2 so far. I'm pretty proud of that. I'll keep you updated and give you a full update next month on how many days I actually talked about my podcast in real life, not just on social media. And then my last experiment is something that I'm super excited about, and it is the giveaway for season 3. So the giveaway starts today as you're listening, and it will end next Tuesday. So you have a whole week, and I am giving away my DIY podcasting course called The Friendly Guide to Creating and Launching Your Podcast. So this is one of the main things I was working on during my winter break. It's a course that's going to take you from your podcast idea to launching your show. There's a really detailed workbook as well as 4 video trainings, and they work together seamlessly. To make sure that it worked and it was a good fit, I actually went through the trainings and the workbook with a client to make sure that it helped her to launch her podcast, and it did. Her podcast is out. I think she's got 3 episodes, maybe 4 out now, and I'm so proud of her. It's such a good podcast. It's called Permission to Pause. I'll put a link to that too. I mean, why not? You'll really love it. I definitely do. So to celebrate season 3 coming out, being in the world, I am giving away my DIY podcasting course. So if you would like to own my course for free, all you have to do is talk about the Friendly Podcast Guide on social media and then tag me so that I know that you did it, so that I can enter you into the drawing. Super basic, super simple. There will be one lucky winner who gets my course, and hopefully that's you. I am so proud of it. It really will help you create your podcast in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, and in a way that like sets you up for success for later, so that it's sustainable and you don't like get overwhelmed after doing it for a month. Like all the systems, all the formulas are in there to help you be successful, not only starting your podcast, but launching it. And then after that, you're set up for success as well. So I'm so excited. Please, please, please share about the Friendly Podcast Guide so that I can enter you into this giveaway, and hopefully you can win it and get this course and be on your way. So I'm so excited. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this first episode back is what I did during my winter break, because there is such a stigma against taking intentional breaks from podcasting. And I wanted to kind of talk you through the things that I did and just to remind you how awesome taking a break is. So these are the things that I did. I celebrated Christmas with my family without worrying about putting out episodes. I took a trip with my family, which was super fun. I did 18 podcast coaching calls, which is so amazing. That was so much fun. And I was able to focus on those coaching calls and not have to also be thinking about putting out episodes. It was really nice to take that break. I did a lot of praying and meditating and journaling about this new year, about this new season, and it really helped me to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to accomplish that. This one's a little embarrassing, but again, complete transparency. I tried creating a podcast launch group coaching program. That didn't go very well, but truly that's the thing that turned into the DIY course. So I feel like it all worked out, but in the moment it was a bummer. It did not work out the way that I wanted it to at the time, but now I'm like, oh, it was supposed to be a DIY course, not a group coaching program. And now I know, and now it's here. Another thing that I did is I turned all of my episodes from season 2 into blog posts and created pins on Pinterest for each of those posts, which truly is one of my favorite marketing things for my podcast is Pinterest. I'll talk about it later in season 3. There's an episode planned for season 3, and I've already seen some good things happening because of putting my episodes on Pinterest. I also updated my email sequences so that those are up to date. I interviewed most of my guests for season 3, which was a big goal of mine. I wanted to get as many interviews done before, so I wasn't stressed about that during season 3. And I read 15 books. I think I actually read more, but those are the ones that I can remember. I love reading, if you didn't know that already. So, and it was so nice that I got to read so many books because I had time to do it. So this is me reminding you that having a seasonal podcast is the answer. If you are feeling burned out or you're worried about burning out, have a seasonal podcast. If I was trying to put out episodes every week, I wouldn't have been able to put my episodes on Pinterest, and then I wouldn't have gotten the residual effects of that are already starting to come in. I wouldn't have been able to create my DIY course. I wouldn't have been able to do as many podcast coaching calls. Like, there are so many things that I was able to do during my break that I would not have been able to do if I was still putting out episodes. So this is my little plug to please at least consider having a seasonal format for your podcast. It has been like the best thing for me. I'm hopping off of my soapbox now. Will you share this episode with your podcasting friend who's getting a little burned out from their podcast and needs some help making it doable and fun again? This episode's going to help them to not feel so alone in podcasting, because I definitely shared some vulnerable stuff in this episode. And it's going to help them, hopefully, to consider having a seasonal format, which is really going to help them to do their podcast in a better way. In next week's episode, I talk about what the Barbie movie taught me about podcasting. It's a good one, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.